I like the pink hat.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah. Oh, I like walk.
So do I normally, but I
This is
walked
too
to
cold.
my car earlier. and
I
it's
drove
like-
this.
Normally I would walk.
It's up to 20 miles. There you go. January 7th, 2025. Item on the agenda is introductions. Scott Graff, Chair, Westminster BZA.
I'm Brenda Fraser, Vice Chair.
Second.
Karen Roth, Board Attorney.
Joe Adkins of the Westminster Planning Department. Mark Debo, the Director of Community Planning and Development.
We have a new member of the seat. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, okay. My name is Richard Huss, resident of Westminster since the late 70s. 35-year career in Carroll County Public Schools as a teacher and administrator. Retired once, 10 years after that in the graduate studies program at Daniel College, and now I'm retired for real. No, I said this time it's for real.
Welcome aboard. We have a bit of a backlog of meeting summaries we have to go through. I assume that you had a chance to read those as well. I submitted comments to city staff. So they have been taken care of.
Yes, sir.
Can we just batch all these together or do them one by one? Same time.
Your motion. I make a motion to approve the minutes from May 7th, 2024, July 2nd, 2024, October 1st, 2024, and November 5th.
Second. All in favor? Meeting summaries approved. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the final decision letter for BZA case-24.
So after case 2407 was heard and a decision was made by the board, decision was drafted to incorporate all of your comments. That was drafted and circulated to both of you. Comments were included and it's now before you for approval.
Motion to approve the final decision from BZA 2407.
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Two hearings tonight, 5, the first being a BZA case number 24-05. This is an appeal of the zoning administrator's determination dated June 11th of 2024 regarding section 164-3, 164-45.8 of the zoning ordinance for property located at 301 East Main Street within the city.
Swear in everybody who intends to testify in this case at the same time. That's the board's practice.
Anyone here prepared to testify on this case?
Okay, fine. Sign case, please stand up and be sworn in.
That doesn't, does that count public comment?
Yeah, do you want public comments? Sworn in, sort of.
I would imagine if you're gonna comment.
Yeah, public comment.
All right, do you solemnly swear to give the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Matthew Herf on behalf of the applicant, or Abdelli, East Coast, or Helen, I should say, East Coast Real Estate Investments. East Coast is a landlord with a number of properties throughout Westminster and Carroll County. In particular, we're here tonight about the property located at 301 East Main Street, Westminster, Maryland, which is more commonly known to those in the community as Main Street Views. Seen their sign right there at the intersection of Main Street and Washington Road for many years. Big sign of Main Street Views. And we are asking for permission to place or to continue to place a business sign on this well-established business here in the community. As I'll explain further, it doesn't have to be the specific sign that's on the structure at this moment in time, but they would like a sign there for health and safety and business purposes, which I can explain which I'll explain further. The process started way back in a while back. It started back in 2023. A number of communications about signage on that property, and then June 20th, 2023, East Coast submitted a sign permit application and paid the fee. Well, submitted a check to pay the fee. It still hasn't been cashed yet. So we're not quite clear what's going on there. But they've attempted to follow the right processes and procedures here to get the sign permit approved. They then obtained my services, and I filed a zoning determination regarding the appropriateness of the sign in July of 2023. In June of 2024, we finally got a determination on that, and that resulted in this appeal. So it's been a long road for this sign. But what I can say is this property has been a commercial apartment complex since 1986, which I understand in the city's parlance falls under the category of a multifamily dwelling. And a lot of different uses fall into that category. There's condos, there's townhomes, there's triplexes, quadplexes, and in this case, an apartment complex, so to speak. There's 15. This isn't a minor apartment operation here. It's not a one-off building or structure. There's 15 units in it. It's been these buildings. There are several buildings there for many years. We can trace the signage back on the structure for many years. Previous owner Steve Dallas is here to talk about how the sign was there when he acquired it. I think really the only thing that we're talking, the floor plan of the structure has stayed the same. Pretty much everything has stayed the same about this structure other than routine maintenance and keeping up the property. Other than this sign, 2022, East Coast acquired the property. They put up a sign mistakenly, not realizing they need the sign permit to put a new sign up there. If they had kept, rightfully so, at that point in time, the Main Street Views sign that had been there for many years that everyone sees that intersection was getting dated, worn out, needed replaced. If they had just left up the old beaten up, worn out sign, I don't know that we'd even be here. what triggered this was putting up a new sign. So I don't know that it is or should be the city's policy to reward folks who aren't updating, keeping fresh, making things look nice. And so we're here as a well-known property owners, city trying to make Main Street nice. And in fact, Main Street has done so, or East Coast has done so in a number of properties up and down Main Street. They renovated them to make them nicer and put them in a better spot than they were when they first acquired them. I also am going to have testimony and point out here tonight that, as you'll see, it seems to be common industry practice for apartment complexes to have signs. Beg anyone to really think about it and say, you know what, that apartment complex doesn't have a sign. Yeah, we can get into what sign would be appropriate for this structure, what sign would the city be favorable. We're willing to have that dialogue. We've been willing to have that dialogue. We submitted a sign permit application and have heard crickets on that. What we're here tonight is to ask that they be permitted to have a sign, and then we can get into what that sign looks like. We'll also be discussing portions of the code here tonight. The city is asking, city staff is asking for this apartment complex not to be considered a business. We're asking for a business sign. The city has a framework in place now that requires landlords to apply for a rent, to be a renter, to have a renter's license before they can lease their property. The East Coast pays taxes both to the state of Maryland, the city of Westminster, and the IRS. They file business tax returns. They charge tenants money to live there. So they follow all the different business regulations that are required of them as a owner of a rental property of a fairly large scale rental operation. So I'm not sure why this would be a different situation. We'll also be talking about some of the health and safety reasons why a sign is important. It's a demarcation point to direct fire, EMS, tradespeople, delivery people to that structure to deliver things, to find somebody who's in help, things of that nature. My clients will be able to discuss that in greater detail too. Again, if the city feels that a different style sign is appropriate, we're willing to have that conversation. East Coast wants to be partners with the city of Westminster. So we're here to continue that dialogue and answer any questions that you ask. And whenever I'm ready to call my first witness, unless the city has any opening statement they would like to make.
Thank you.
I would like to call my first witness, Dustin Donadio. And would it be appropriate if we sat while I ask questions? Thank you. I want to be as respectful as possible, but Mr. Donadio, what is your role with East Coast Real Estate Investments?
I'm the owner and sole member of the company.
And is it true that your company acquired the property located at 301 East Main Street in May of 2022?
That's correct.
And was there signage on the building when you acquired it?
There was signage on the building when I acquired it and has been since I was a young child driving by it, as I remember.
Okay. And what condition was that signage when you acquired it in 2022?
The sign was very weathered. All the paint was cracked. It was wood, so the wood was beginning to rot around all the fasteners. Very unsightly.
And if the board would like, I have extra copies of my application, or the alternative, I could ask that just the packet be moved in as collectively as appellant's exhibit number 1. In the packet, we have some photos of what the
These are all the same.
they're all the same.
I have one, thank you.
Let the record show.
applicant's exhibit.
And as you flip through that packet, looking at exhibit 2A. I'll turn your attention to 2C first. 2C. Nadia, is that what the sign looked like when you acquired it?
Correct, that's the previous sign that was on the building as far back as I can remember, which I duplicated the same size and square foot dimensions.
So you created a new sign and it's the same square footage, same size as the previous sign.
Correct, exactly. And I still have the sign also in my possession.
Okay, you still have the old
The
Main Street
original.
new sign?
I
Okay.
do, which I could always bring in.
And when you turn to 2B, is that a true and accurate copy of what the new sign looks like?
Yes, that was the new sign that I replaced it with better UV withholding materials. So to try to make a better look at the building and Main Street.
Okay. And what type of material is the new sign made of?
So the new signs are made out of a max metal, which is roughly a 6 mil thickness, and it uses a rubber core with aluminum on each side, with a colored through material, so it doesn't have as many UV issues as far as fading.
And what information is depicted on that sign, on the new sign?
It states first and foremost Main Street Muse at the top, which is the same as what the previous sign says, as well as my company that owns the building and the phone number, or the current phone number for leasing.
And basically, you said that you've seen that sign for many years on the structure, correct?
Correct, at least as far as I can remember in my childhood, probably I definitely remember it at 7 or 8 years old, and I'm 34.
And what type of business is going on there on 301 East Main Street?
It's an apartment complex, so we rent units for long-term rentals.
Do you live at that property?
I do not.
Do any of your family members reside at that property?
No one in any relation or employee lives there.
And you lease those rental units to individuals in the community?
Correct.
And have you made any changes to the layout of the complex since you acquired it from the previous owner?
Now, the layout's exactly the same. The only difference is we've updated as far as painting and tried to clean up the grounds, landscaping, and try to do our part to enhance the community as much as possible with every acquisition.
And have you acquired any business permits for that property through the city of Westminster?
The rental licenses, which are, I would think, a business license.
And do you pay taxes to the state of Maryland?
I do.
Do you pay taxes to the federal government?
That's correct.
And do you pay taxes to the city of Westminster?
Yes.
And do you have business overhead associated with this property?
Yes.
What sort of overhead?
We have overhead as far as utilities. We have a very enhanced maintenance program where one of our full-time employees visits the premises daily and weekly to police the area for trash, blow leaves. We really take pride in trying to make the Main Street whole community as nice as possible. This is where I was born and raised, so I try to make it as nice as I can.
And is it accurate that you charge rent for people living in these properties, right?
Absolutely.
It's not a pro bono type situation.
No.
And have you worked in the rental property business for some time at this point?
Around, I would say 2009 is when I started with my first one.
And have you noticed anything about the other apartment complexes that you observed in the community?
Well, they all have signs.
What kind of types of signs do you see?
They have signs with the apartment name, the company or managing partner that runs them, the phone number. It's very similar to the one that's in front of the 301 property.
And you've observed some of those in the community, both in city limits and just adjacent to city limits?
Yes, countless.
Is this a true and accurate copy of the photos you've acquired?
That is correct and accurate.
Presenting the board with exhibit number 2, which I'd asked the group into. Consider not you being a member of the business community in the apartment running community, is there good sense for this type of sign to exist?
Absolutely, in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people's opinions, that's why we see the signs at all these complexes. For deliveries, subcontractors, even in-house employees with a sign with the name of the complex is very easy. The complex has been known as the Main Street View since the building was erected in, I guess it was 1986. So I think that the signs are very important, and especially for EMS, fire. We have tenants that lose the phone number and have a water leak, and they're standing out front putting the phone number into their phone. I think it plays a big effect.
So they'll go outside, look up at the sign and call for assistance.
I've seen more, I've at least 2 or 3 times since I've acquired the property, people either they've had a lockout and we have magnets on all the refrigerators with emergency contacts and everything for the staff at the East Coast, and I've seen them outside personally on their cell phone putting the number in.
And are you aware of any situations where your staff has directed emergency services to property based on the signage?
Yes, 1 or 2 times that I know for sure. I don't remember the dates or anything at this time.
And what goes on at this property in terms of exterior maintenance?
So I mean, every day someone stops by, checks the parking lot for trash, blows the leaves in the fall. We perform snow and ice removal services to keep the property safe, the parking lot safe for any tenants of the building, as well as the front sidewalk that everyone walks in the city on, we want to keep safe. Building maintenance, plumbing leaks, repairs, painting of the outdoor wood and doors and everything. So we're very involved in the maintenance of the properties.
Do you ever have to send tradespeople who are not employees of East Coast to the property?
Absolutely, for electricians, plumbers on occasion, HVAC and carpet trades that we don't have full-time employees that involve. We have to use subcontractors, so that's a great indication of the.
And there's an address listed for East Coast properties on Kaysville Road and Vicksburg, correct?
That's correct.
Is that a location where you meet with tenants?
No, that is the mailing address where we get all the mail and rent checks.
So that's not a place where you meet with tenants whatsoever?
No, that's more of a home office that
Okay. Where do you meet with potential tenants?
we meet all tenants at the building that they're either signing a lease at or that they reside at. This particular building has a point-off laundry room in it, and we have like a small desk in it where people meet if they are signing a lease and paying the first month rent. And we just had the carpet shampooed. We don't want to walk people in on the wet carpet, it's drying. So we meet in the laundry room. I guess it's kind of a leasing office, you could say. And meet the other tenants there if they don't want us, invite us into the unit to talk about an issue. It's just kind of a common grounds to meet.
And does East Coast have a history of renovating properties in the city of Westminster?
We do.
And what could you do? Give a brief overview of the properties you renovated.
We renovated the main court building on the corner of East Main and Court Street, 201 East Main. And that is, I believe, around 20 unit commercial building, which we restore the building pretty much from the ground up, from the brick masonry facade to all the original crown and corbel work at the top of the building. We completely stripped everything manually and refinished it and painted it. 146 East Main we did, which is a small residential building. There's a lot of different, 319 East Main, we renovated, 326 East Main, 229 East Main, which was the old, it was the Bernstein House, I believe that's on the historic registry of Westminster. And that building, we did all the brick facade on it, we repointed all the stone foundations, repaired all the wood crown and corbel.
And is it also true that East Coast submitted a sign permit to the city of Westminster on or about June 20th, 2023?
Yes, that's correct.
Have you heard any resolution to that?
No, we heard absolutely nothing for, I guess that was around a year when I guess that was a deny after the 1 year period,
Was the check ever cashed for it?
not to my knowledge.
And let's say you attempted to follow those procedures.
Absolutely.
Are you as managing member of the company willing to work with the city and coming up with a design that works for everybody?
I have,
And have you been willing?
I have.
Additional questions for Mr. Donadio? I'll be happy to call my next witness. I'd like to call Rick Connect. That's not gonna say that. Yeah. Mr. Jimenez, is it accurate that you are an employee of East Coast?
Yes,
And what is your role
manager of leasing and property maintenance.
there? And are you familiar with the 301 East Main Street?
Yes,
And what have you assisted tenants there?
absolutely.
In what ways have you assisted tenants there?
Signing of leases, maybe there's an issue with their unit potentially, repairs. All kinds of different stuff.
And where would you meet with them at the 301 East Main Street property?
In the coin op laundry room, at our desk, we do all of our lease signing there, communications with tenants. As Dustin said, it's a nice centralized spot.
And have you ever met with a tenant at the Kaysville Road property?
No,
And in your role as a property manager there, has the signage been useful to you in doing your job?
absolutely.
And in what ways?
Directing subcontractors, law enforcement on a couple different occasions, fire, EMS, potential, new tenants maybe that are trying to find the building, city and county housing, inspectors.
And can you think of a specific, and maybe involved, broadening the scope of this a little bit? Have there been occasions where there have been some serious situations where fire and EMS have needed that signage to assist the tenant?
With fire, so the last instance that I had was more with the Westminster Police Department, where we had a safety issue. And they had to come in and release, some items, just to make sure you keep everybody as safe as possible. We do have, elderly, I don't want to say elderly, but older tenants that do have disabilities. And, definitely people that are more likely to need EMS services.
And has the signage been helpful in directing police to the location?
Absolutely.
Could you describe the maintenance routine at the 301 East Main Street property?
Very strict daily. Either myself, one of the other guys, we check it minimum once a day. Leaves in the fall, snow and ice in the winter. We try and keep it as clean as humanly possible.
Do you ever have to direct subcontractors to the location?
Yes.
No additional questions for Mr. Hernandez. I would like to next call Steve Goss. You know, guys that want stuff. Mr. Ross, I understand that you previously owned 301 East Main Street.
Yes, my brother and I owned it for over 13 or 14 years. I believe we acquired it in 2008 and sold it in 2022.
Was there signage on the front of the property when you acquired it?
It was a sign on the building when I bought it. It had the name of the building, Main Street Views, and had a phone number on it.
Was it substantially the same format as in you're on 2F?
That's the
Right.
exact sign.
It's the exact sign?
Yes.
And when you sold it to East Coast, you've been by the property since you sold it to East Coast, correct?
Yes,
You've seen the new sign, correct?
yes.
Is it the same size as the
Same
previous?
size and same place.
And have you've been around the property, the different units and things of that nature since you sold it to East Coast?
Yes, I do some work for them still time to time, and I've been at the property in numerous times since I sold it.
When was the last time you were at the property?
Probably 2 months ago.
Have they changed anything in terms of the layout of the property?
Nothing,
Have they changed anything about the laundry room and since you sold it?
nothing, still has the same combination.
Don't put that on public record. And did you meet with tenants in the laundry room?
It was an easy place to do it because we would show somebody an apartment. And if they wanted the apartment, then the last thing we would show them was the laundry room. Because everybody had access, it's given a key to have access to the laundry room. And that then became the obvious place to do it.
Would meet with clients at other times if they had a question about something associated with their apartment?
It's possible, I can't remember any specific time that I could tell you on this date and time I met with somebody, but that was the central place that we met tenants to do these things.
Additional questions for Mr. Doss? I would next call Lindley Flash. What is your role with East Coast?
Office manager.
And where do you ever do office management specifically at the 301 East Main Street location?
If I'm ever meeting with a tenant or potential tenant, absolutely.
And where would you meet with them?
The laundry.
Okay. And
We're alone at home.
the business address is on Case Mill Road in Traceman.
Correct.
Have you ever met with a tenant or a customer at the Case Mill Road?
I have not, it's a private residence.
No additional questions from this spot. That is my case in chief. Obviously, we would reserve for rebuttal, but I understand that yes, what's the name and things of that nature, but that's our case in chief.
Am I able to ask questions of people to testify? Can I start there first?
Have the right to, yes,
Okay.
to ask questions.
And not to be difficult, but I mean, that probably might have been more appropriate when they were on the same stand, so to speak, because then I could ask some rebuttal questions. So as long as I'm allowed to ask some rebuttal questions, but yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry, just gathering, there's a lot was said. Mr. Gauss. I'm sorry, did you ever obtain a sign permit to install the sign from the city of Westminster? We were unable to locate any.
I didn't install the sign. I didn't install the sign. The sign was there when I bought the building.
So you can't say that it was approved by the city legally to be located there.
I can't say in the 13 years that I owned it, the city never said anything about it.
Okay. And Mr. Donadio? Right, thank you. You referenced the fact that you're using the laundry room as an office space.
Correct.
Did you obtain any approval from the city to operate an office use as a property?
I did not. We're just signing leases, like Mr. Goff mentioned, that it was the final spot that you show when you show the apartments.
But again, you stated that it's office space and that you're leasing office in your testimony. So the site plan approved for the project was only for multifamily and a laundry room. There is no statement that ever approved an office use or leasing space in this location. If it was, we probably would not be here today.
Sure.
But the site plan itself is only for multifamily and for laundry room. So again, we've never obtained any approval from the city or from a building permit to establish a leasing office in this space.
Okay. So you can't sign, so it has to be
Again,
a license to sign a lease.
Did you ever obtain an approval to operate a leasing office or get a building permit to operate a leasing office in this space?
I did not.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. So.
I had a couple of more questions. Sorry.
So since you asked some questions, now we have. Let him go ahead with that.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Goff, when you acquired the property in the early 2000s, was the sign already weathered in any way, shape, or form?
To some extent, but not as bad as it was when I sold it. The only change I made to it was changing the phone number.
The point being is it seemed like it had been there for some time.
It had obviously been there for some time.
And it's accurate that when you acquired the property, they gave you some appraisal materials and things of that nature, correct?
That is correct.
And those appraisal materials are in the packet that's already evidence, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so that's all my questions for Mr. Goff. Audio.
Yeah, staff like to give their reports.
Yes. I would like to point out the exhibits. I don't think we went over the exhibits themselves that were provided to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I would just like to enter them into the record. Exhibit 1 would be the staff report. Exhibit 2 is the 301, 305 East Main Street site plan. Exhibit 3 is the zoning determination requested dated July 6, 2023. Exhibit 4, the zoning determination dated June 11, 2024. Exhibit 5 is administrative appeal application dated July 8, 2024. And Exhibit 6 is public hearing notifications. And then for the record, I think anything provided, I would request anything provided by the applicant that would be Exhibit 7. I think you reference it as Exhibit 1 and 2. Again, I'm not sure how we wanted the numbering, but I was just going off of what we had on the application. If that's acceptable, that we just add those as follow exhibits.
That's not completely fine. Whichever way they want to be numbered, that's fine.
I think is one.
Is how you. The exhibits, excuse me, Mr. Chair. I apologize for that.
Yeah.
The exhibits identified in the staff report, that is a listing that you want to use.
Yes.
In that order.
Yes, please.
So I just started with like Exhibit 6, and that page was there.
So I would suggest, if there is no objection, we have received applicants Exhibit 1 and 2. Let's just keep this the way we have it, even if there's some repetition.
I'm fine with that, and normally in court, I was calling an applicant or appellants Exhibit 1 and 2, and we could call Mr. Depot's staff. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So that's what we're doing.
That's fine. I just didn't want it, there was, just for clarification.
We know what we're talking about, sure.
Thanks. Yep. Okay, so with that, pursuant to section 164, 161A, the board has the power to hear and decide appeals that it is alleged that there is an error in the determination made by the zoning administrator. The appellant's arguments are misleading and incorrect as they do not pertain to what is before the board, which is only the zoning determination provided with Exhibit 4. The appellant has not provided any information demonstrating an error in the determination based on the zoning ordinance. The document that regulates signage in the city of Westminster in the DB downtown business zone is not clearly specified the grounds for appeal as it relates to zoning determination. Again, what is before the BZA today is only the zoning determination, whether the zoning administrator made an error in its determination. Essentially, the appellant's arguments are based on a determination that was never made, a sign existing at the property which was not approved by the city or not part of the request or provided with the zoning determination, a business use that was never legally established at the property under the regulations of the zoning ordinance. A residential use is not a residential is not for a residential purpose, but a business purpose, and a business that is licensed to operate at 2320 Kays Mill Road, Finksboro, Maryland. The basis of the subject zoning determination under appeal is rather straightforward. East Coast Real Estate Investment is the owner of the property located in the downtown business district and consists of 4 buildings containing residential rental units. The appellant asserts that the business conducted at the property is the rental of apartments and townhomes, and that as is customary with a residential business, leasing agents frequently meet the tenants. However, the appellant zoning determination request was simply whether signs currently on the property would be considered a business sign, as defined by section 164.3 of the code, and therefore allowed as a permitted use under section 164.45.8 of the code. So again, a lot of the discussion that has been already provided has not been relevant to what actually is before you today. From the information provided by the applicant and the research conducted, the zoning administrator concluded that the sign in question was intended for East Coast, a leasing company, which is a business use, more specifically a professional or business non-professional, a non-residential office use, which is a permitted use in a DB zone. So again, the determination has determined that yes, a sign for a business as East Coast is a business sign, and an office use is a permitted use in the DB zone. The zoning administrator then reviewed the current site plan 301, 305 East Main Street, which again is provided as an exhibit, which was approved by the city's Planning and Zoning Commission on November 5th, 1986, for 15 multifamily dwelling units or apartment building consisting of 7 efficiency units, 8 one-bedroom units, and 1 laundry facility. The zoning administrator found no other submitted or approved site development applications or Board of Zoning Appeals applications for the property. The zoning administrator concluded that a multifamily dwelling use with an accessory laundry facility is a residential use pursuant to the zoning ordinance and is the only principal use approved at the property. Again, there's 2 specific uses listed in the ordinance. One is a dwelling multifamily, and another one, as referenced, is a business, is a professional or business non-residential office. Again, 2 distinct, differently listed uses in the zoning ordinance. To establish a use in the city, you need to go through a site plan process to establish a use. In this case, the only site plan was to establish a multifamily dwelling residential use. The State Department of Assessment and Taxation lists the use of the property as apartments and not a commercial or business use. Typically, if the business or commercial use is operating, the state tax assessment is going to assess them as a business or commercial use. In this case, that is not what's listed. The zoning administrator then reviewed the zoning ordinance definition of a business sign and whether a business sign is allowed in the DB zone. And therefore, the property zoning ordinance defines sign business as a sign which directs attention to a business or professional or profession or to a commodity, service, or entertainment sold or offered upon the premises where the sign is located. Zoning ordinance section 164.121A states, business signs pertaining to a use on the premises are permitted as an accessory use in the business zone, except the central business zone and in the IR restricted industrial zone, provided that they meet the following provisions. There's certain provisions you have to meet. It's been determined that DB zone is a business zone. So again, DB zone is allowed to have a business sign. Furthermore, the zoning administrator reviewed ordinance 860 and ordinance 870, the most recent text amendments to the sign section article approved by the mayor and common council that referred to on-premise business signs and business signs pertaining to a use on the premises are permitted as an accessory use in the business zone, in this case a DB zone, as commercial signage. From the information provided and the research conducted, the zoning administrator concluded that a sign for a professional or business non-residential office use is again a business sign, and such business sign may be located in the DB zone, subject to professional or business non-residential office principal use being legally established and located on the premise. So again, the determination states that the business sign is allowed in the DB zone and that a business use, if legally established, again, by site plan per the ordinance, could therefore have a sign associated with that business. Then, as stated in the zoning determination, the property is located in Westminster Historic District, although not referenced in the zoning determination. The property is subject to the standards of renovation of Westminster, which states, the copy of any sign shall be limited to the name of the business and any other pertinent information related to a bona fide business conducted on the premise. The advertising by material or product manufacturers and suppliers will not be permitted on any exterior sign except as the primary identification for the place of business. This information further emphasizes that the sign is allowed for a principal business legally conducted on the premises. In conclusion, the zoning determination recognizes that a sign for professional or business residential office use is a business sign, and such business sign is allowed in the DB zone, again, subject to the principal, professional, and business non-residential office use legally established and operating at the property in which the business sign is intended. Again, the business sign is intended to attract people to that property for that business. However, as such principal office use is not legally established and operating at the property, a business sign for a principal office use is not permitted. If the owner of the property wishes to locate a principal office use at the property, subject to the regulations of the zoning ordinance, a business sign for such principal office use may be allowed at the property, subject to the regulations of the zoning ordinance. Again, you establish the business use as listed in the zoning ordinance through a site plan. And then once that use is established, you can then have a sign for that particular use. Furthermore, the multifamily dwelling at the property is a special exception use. And as a special exception use, if approved by the board, may have a sign not exceeding 32 square feet. So the other option this applicant would have is to come before the board for the multifamily residential use and obtain a sign for the property. So there's two options. Establish a leasing office to allow for the sign, or come before the board to get a sign for the actual residential use of the multifamily dwelling. Although not relevant to the appeal demonstrating any error in the zoning determination before the board, I would like to address some of the appellant's claims. There is a difference between a principal use and an accessory use, and a difference between a residential use and a business use. Multifamily dwellings subject to provisions of section 164-153, which as listed in the DB zone is a principal permitted use by special exception in the DB zone. An office as professional and business is a principal permitted use in the DB zone subject to meeting requirements of the ordinance. The multifamily dwelling units approved by site plan 301, 305 East Main Street are a principal permitted special exception use. A multifamily dwelling is again a residential use and not a business use. The method by which a dwelling is occupied, whether an owner or a tenant, does not change the principal residential use of the property. Furthermore, an accessory function of a principal residential use of the property is not a principal use and does not change the principal residential use of the property as well. An accessory use is one that is incidental to but associated with a specific principal use that is located on the property. Therefore, the accessory function of meetings between leasing agents and tenants and prospective tenants for various matters as described by the appellant. So request for determination does not create a new or separate principal use of the property. East Coast, the real estate business use whose agents occasionally enter the property as part of the duties which are principally based off-site. The agent's activities on the site do not establish professional or business office use of the property. The primary use, again, an activity occurring at the property is multifamily dwelling, which happens people were living on the property in the multifamily dwellings. That is the principal use. It's a residential use. A business sign is defined again as a sign that directs attention to a business, professional, or profession. By definition, the standard city zoning and sign permit application approval practice to determine as to whether a sign is a business sign cannot be made without first determining if any business is operating at the property in which the business sign is intended to be located. So again, when a permit application comes in for a business sign, you first determine that business that the sign is intended has been legally established. If it hasn't, we cannot approve the sign permit, then it will not be approved, which is the case with the sign permit that was submitted in this case. A function of a business located off-site that may or may not occur at a property does not establish, again, a principal use at the property. As an example, a mortgage company having interest in a property that is not operating a business. So again, we are mortgages. Those companies have interest in the property as well as the applicant having the ownership of the property. However, those mortgage companies cannot therefore provide a business sign for the mortgage company on the residential property. Again, the principal use still remains residential, whether it's a single family detached, a townhouse, or multifamily building. The zoning administrator concurs with the appellant that the State Department of Assessment and Taxation for East Coast Real Estate Investment was created on and about January 11th, 2018 for the purpose of engaging in the business of real estate owning and leasing property. Again, the business, which with its principal office being located at 2320 K Mills Road, Finksburg, Maryland. However, the applicant is not requesting determination as assigned to its offices at K's Mill. They're again trying to ask for a business sign at a residential location. The zoning administrator does not dispute the appellant's claim that for tax and income purposes, the IRS may view the rental of real estate as a trade or business. However, the courts did not state that such distinctions alter the underlying zone of the property or establish the principal use of the property. Again, for example, a single-family detached dwelling, single-family house located in a residential zoning district that does not permit businesses as a principal use, where the property owner is renting the house and obtain a rental license, that the dwelling does not establish a business at the property. In this case, the principal use again remains residential. The requirement to obtain a rental license, as was stated, section 119.4 licensing and inspection of rental property is under the city code chapter 119 property maintenance, and is not a function or requirement of the zoning ordinance, again, which is before the Board of Zoning Appeals. Which determines the zoning ordinance is the element that determines the allowed use of the property. In fact, the zoning ordinance does not reference the term rental license. Although East Coast receives compensation from the residents of the property, the business is not being run at the property. In conclusion, the appellant's arguments are based upon erroneous and misleading information. The appellant again has not demonstrated any error in the zoning determination. Following the interpretation of the zoning ordinance propounded by the appellant would completely undermine the signage requirements of the DB business zone, as well as signage in all other zoning districts, and would create a new sign type that is not currently allowed in the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is clear that the business sign is permitted in the DB zone. The ordinance is also clear that a business sign is permitted only when located on and upon a premises or property of the principal business to which the sign is directing attention. The property owner may locate a business sign again at the property following approval of a principal business use at the property in accordance with the pertinent provisions of the zoning ordinance and approval by the planning and zoning commission if applicable. The property also may locate a sign on the property for the special exception use again as a multifamily dwelling residential use in accordance with the pertinent provisions of the zoning ordinance and approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Therefore, the zoning administrator is requesting the Board of Zoning Appeals affirm the June 11th, 2024 zoning determination and to deny the appeal. Sorry, that was somewhat long-winded, but one of the cover.
Yeah, I'll say.
There was a lot to cover.
Oh, dear Lord.
Your one is right.
I'm sorry, I do, Mark, I will probably have a lot of questions. That was a whole lot of information, but, when you went to replace the sign is when you sent the application, you didn't just put the sign up, or you put the sign up, how did this actually come about if you just replaced it? Is that a good question? I missed that.
Yeah, and so I think the order of operation here was that East Coast replaced the sign sometime in 2022. Didn't realize that to place a sign that was already there, you needed to get a sign permit. So then went through that process, submitted a sign permit application that still hasn't gone anywhere. The check hasn't even been cashed. And around that time, I also filed a zoning determination request.
So the city sent you a notice that you were in violation.
No, we've never received a violation there. There was discussion with my client's representatives of, hey, you need a permit for the sign, and then they enlisted me, they submitted the sign permit.
So the sign permit was submitted again. We didn't accept the check because we did not accept the sign permit application because we could not process it. It was for a business sign for a business not located at the property.
Was there any communication back to the applicant?
That led to discussions that we couldn't approve it, which led to the determination request, that whether a business sign was allowed at the property.
And what was your comment about 32 square foot? I guess that was.
So all special exceptions that are approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals can equally have a sign for that special exception use not to exceed 32 square feet. So essentially, they could come before the Board of Zoning Appeals with that 32 square foot sign and obtain approval of that sign for the multifamily residential use. That is certainly an option by the applicant.
It's 32 square feet, I believe, right?
It's 4 foot by 8 foot, that's 32 square feet.
So it is that, the sign.
They could submit an application to come before the Board of Zoning Appeals for amended special. It's a special exception use as a multifamily residential. They can come before you because it's a change to that special exception application for the sign because the original site plan did not show any signage.
The age of the building initially, was it built early 80s? Most of 87.
Yeah.
Now, the downtown business zone, that existed? It was in existence? in 87. And on that property.
That's a very good.
That wasn't in the downtown business.
So my question would be, whether the sign was ever permitted? And no one just picked up on it?
We went back and tracked all sign permits, so whether it was in the DB zone or not, any sign needs a sign permit within the city of Westminster. We could not locate a sign permit for this property. So whether it was the business zone that eventually came DB, again, this is just hypothetical. Which very well may be the case because maybe it was approved as permitted use and over time. The DB zone was established, again, hypothetically, it would have created a legally non-conforming activity, but it's still a special exception use. So they still have an option to get a sign for it, to get approval of a sign for their special exception use.
So based on the timing of it, it was either the original use sign was either a non-conforming sign or it was erroneous to begin with.
If it wasn't legally approved, it would not, it wouldn't be legally non-conforming, it could be illegally non-conforming in an aspect, but unless it was legally approved by the city, it wouldn't have a non-conforming status that would allow the sign to continue.
But it's a moot point now because it's replaced
Yes,
with a new sign.
yeah, once the old sign is taken down, that whether it was legally non-conforming or not, that non-conformity goes away. Hence leading to the submission of the sign permit. Again, if the site plan at the time approved the sign as part of that multifamily residential use, we wouldn't be here today.
And that was still processed in 1986 and
1986, 87, so yeah. The zoning ordinance was in effect at that time.
sign requirements were the same
Sign
in
permits.
1987.
Yes. Sign permits were required.
Let's point out, I don't know that all the sign requirements were the same. Like that you required to have a sign permit, but there's different regulations here as I'm looking at myself, where things were amended. 1995, 1998, 2015.
So the sign permits were required. He's correct, maybe area of signs might have changed and other minor things. We did have new zoning districts that came through that then were added to the sign section that would have their own separate sign standards, different from the B business sign or the business signs.
You were just trying to totally understand the process. So there's a sign on the building now that is the size that's allowable. The size could be approvable.
Yes,
So it's the content of the sign.
no, if you look at the determination, we did not discuss content. The question,
Let me back up and ask it a different way. So there is an avenue by which they could apply for a sign, the size of the sign on the building, to identify the building, but have different information than what is on the sign that's currently on the building.
again, I'm not looking at the information. I can't look at content. The determination simply asks, can East Coast Realty have a sign at the property, and would that sign be a business sign? And I didn't, if you look at the response, I can't get into, and I did not get into content. I simply responded to what was requested. And it was, yes, East Coast would be considered a business under the ordinance as an office use. Yes, office use is allowed business in B business zone or the DB zone. And that business could ultimately have a sign for the business. Again, if the business was established.
Or the residential dwelling.
Or the residential dwelling, yes.
Right, so that's the avenue I was
Yeah, that's.
referring to as a possible.
There's two options, and then staff is saying, and again, we never said that the sign is not permitted. We just said the sign is not permitted for a business that's not there. The sign is allowed. Signage is allowed the property in the DB for an office use, once established. The determination essentially is informing that if you go through the proper process, you could potentially get a sign for a business if established.
If they no longer sign leases in the laundry room, is the sign an issue? And if that was not the case, if you're not considering that a leasing office, and they're not using that laundry room, is that prohibit signage?
So again, they shouldn't have a leasing office there anyway, because they have not obtained that. So as a laundry room and multifamily only there, today, as it is, their option would be, they did not want to change the use of the property or add a new use, would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to add a sign for the multifamily use. Whether they're leasing office, that's another element. If they want to establish a leasing office there, they can amend the site plan to do that. It's a permitted use. It would not have to come back to the Board of Zoning Appeals. It should be a simple amendment to the site plan. And then they could get a sign permit for that now business lease office, which is what consistently happens for apartments within the city, that on the site plan, it will show that they have a leasing office. That leasing office is parked as an office, is defined as square footage. It's not a residential component. It's its own separate entity that's in that site plan. Did I answer that? Answer your question? Oh,
I know.
Questions of staff, on the staff report?
I'll save my comments for myself and for all.
Does anyone else here have questions for staff?
So now if you go to supporting testimony. On how they've signed on those.
I'm just gonna go through this list. I assume everybody that signed in, but if you don't want to say anything, just tell me no, but I'll go name by name and the stand up. We have two Ray.
I'm one of them. Do I stand up? Sure.
If you wish.
I'm R.A.E. Denania, and that's my son. He's amazing. And ever since he was 8, he was riding by the Main Street News. He would tell me, Mom, I'm gonna buy that one day. And I said, good for you. Just keep working, keep going to school. Because you have to work and go to school to learn things together. And he's absolutely, totally amazed me, and I'm so proud of him. He tries to do everything correct. So it's not like he was trying to go through anything, because I myself hand delivered to Melissa Thorne, was absolutely amazing young lady that works there, hand delivered his application, the check, everything. We wanted to make sure it wasn't lost in the mail. But then my other question is what is grandfathered in? If it's been almost 30 years. And apparently somebody anonymously had to complain about this sign. I don't, we just don't know how it came about. But is grandfathered in something? Since it's been almost 30 years for a sign? That the same name's still up there, Main Street News? I don't know, I'm just throwing this there as a mom. That's you, Mark.
So again, there's no such thing as grandfathering. I know that term is used quite a bit, not when it comes to our zoning ordinance. It's whether it's legally non-conforming. Or so that legally non-conforming by the ordinance, by the zoning ordinance, is something that was somehow legally established. And has continued to operate and continue to be there legally. And over time, the ordinance said you can't do that anymore, but that activity or sign has continued to be there and has not changed. That sign continue to be there, even though the ordinance would no longer allow it, as long as it maintains and stays there. Once it goes away, that non-conforming status goes away with it.
Even though it's the same exact size, still has Main Street News.
Once it's removed, again, we could have this schedule. Once it's removed and that non-conformity is taken away, it doesn't exist anymore. To that point, you have a building without a sign.
So can we put the old one back up and just change the phone number?
Again, there was the old one we can't find was ever legally established. So again, that's why I asked the question, if there was an actual sign permit issued for that sign and they replaced the sign, we wouldn't be here today. There was never, we could not find a sign permit that was issued for the original sign. Again, we did a lot of research on this and try to go down every avenue we could. We just ran into the entire time. So.
Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry.
Ray Donadio, R.A.Y.
You're better off.
Can't read the first name of the next sign-in. Golf is the last name.
Oh, golf, no comment.
What's your first name?
Philip.
Philip. Councilman Paul.
Hi, I guess I'll remain seated here unless you need me to. A couple things I want to point out. I'm here tonight on behalf of the mayor and my colleagues on city council. We submitted a letter dated October 28th, 2024 in support of the zoning administrator and believed his decision or this appeal should be denied. This issue has broader implications than just for this property. And I'm gonna also speak tonight from the standpoint, I served on Carroll County Planning and Zoning for 8 to 10 years. I've served on this board for 8 to 10 years prior to my time on city council. So I have some expertise in the arena. Additionally, I manage residential and commercial property as well for my family. So I have some expertise here. And there's a couple things I want to point out. We are here for a very specific reason tonight, which is the applicant or the applicant's attorney sent a letter to the zoning administrator asking whether that sign would be considered a business sign. That's all we're here for tonight, not whether that sign is allowable through some other mechanism of the code, which I think you heard tonight may or may not be the case, okay? Is the zoning administrator's determination correct? And the issue at hand, and as we said in our letter, this is not a business sign as defined by the code. And I keep on hearing, I just have to make a comment. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with content, but this is the original sign. If you notice, it has the name of the building on there, a phone number, and it says apartments available. I don't have a big, the only thing you can read there, even if driving by, is East Coast Real Estate Investments. The phone number is smaller. Supposedly there's the name of the building on there. I challenge you to ride by that building and read that name. I don't see the name of the building there. Well, it's there, but it's very small. It's not readable. And the applicant is confusing the primary use of this property is a residential property, not a business property. Hence why it's not considered a business sign. There's no leasing office there. Okay, just because you sign a lease in an apartment or in the laundry room does not make a leasing office. If you uphold that somehow this residential use is a business use, just by analogy, and Mr. Depot hit on a little bit, my own home, I have a mortgage on it. Bay Capital has a real property interest in my property. Just like East Coast Realty has a real property interest in their property. Tenants pay East Coast Realty to live in that property. I pay the mortgage company to live in my property. If this is okay to have a business sign up there like that, then maybe Bay Capital can have a business sign in front of my house. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is this decision has more ramifications than that just the specific thing. The applicant asked the zoning administrator whether this was considered a business sign. It's not a business sign per the code. And therefore, the mayor and common council feel strongly that the zoning administrator's determination should be upheld. I also, there was the issue brought up about, well, all complexes have signage up all the time. Manage a 20-unit apartment building downtown. You will not find a sign up all the time. When I have a vacancy, a sign goes up. When it's filled, the sign comes down. So the idea that we're saying, well, this is just standard business practice to have a sign up all the time is not necessarily the case. And additionally, what we're here tonight is whether this is a business sign per the zoning code. There are potentially other mechanisms for this gentleman to have that sign on the property. Apparently it was not, sounds like it wasn't appropriately approved back whenever, or who knows. But there are mechanisms to address that specific issue on that specific property. But again, we're here whether we're upholding the zoning administrator's determination. And the question that was asked of the zoning administrator, was that a business sign? And per the zoning code, it is not. It's not a business sign. Thank you.
Thanks.
Geez, my point of view just got shouted down by the whole mayor and council here in the city of Westminster. Let me just stand up. I've been a lifelong resident of Westminster my entire life. We used to treat people better than this. If there was a problem, we'd have known it in 22, right? 2022. I mean, to get here tonight and say, well, if you do it all different, we change your, but you can have a sign. Come on, man. I'm a resident of East Main Street. I'm well aware of all their projects. They have signs. They have the same signs as their other projects. I mean, what are we talking about here? I mean, he ought to be able to walk out and have their sign up. You should cash a check. I mean, that's what it sounds like. It's a bad business deal. You know, I've worked for the city. I'm not going to answer. I've worked for the city many times. I've sat here. My grandfather was mayor of Westminster. My father was on the council. I've been on committees in the city my whole life. I don't understand why we can't have good business here. I mean, it's great to go section and book and this and that and talk about all this stuff. I work for the city as a partner of the city. I was executive director of the Greater Westminster Development Committee, 1994 to 2001. That's the downtown business zone was Longwell Avenue to Anchor Street. That was 94 to 2001. That's where we worked. We worked in that every day. Had an office here on Main Street. 50 people invested while we were doing it with a 30-member board of City of Westminster residents. I don't know what to tell you tonight. I'm sorry to hear the mayor and council doesn't want to hear from me tonight as a citizen. I live on the street.
That's inappropriate. I did not say I didn't want to hear from
Just
you.
listen.
I have
Just
my
listen.
opinion, you have your opinion.
You have
Doug.
your business.
Yes, so
sign.
you have your opinion, I have my opinion.
Mine has their business sign. Thank you. Let's do some good business.
Doug Zepp. I'll hold back. Philip Burns.
I'll speak. I'm personally a resident, also business owner in the same area we're in right now. And I believe some of the things that his company is doing, which is Dusty Donadio and East Coast, is they're reinvesting into the actual community. And I get there's some bylaws and there's some zoning laws and all that stuff. I've been through them all. I've seen some signs that'll make you throw up when you go by. Okay, maybe we've missed them. As you know, the city, I don't know who the inspectors are, and I get it, but the amount of red tape and definitions to follow, I think, is a major issue if we're going to move forward as the city of Westminster with reinvestment people, especially ones that care about their tenants and their properties. I hope that it gets simplified for someone like Dustin Donadio and others that can proceed to do their business and keep going accordingly. That's all I got to say.
Was Colin?
Yeah, let's see. I'm speaking on behalf of my father as well. I sit inside here. But that sign has been there for as long as I can remember. I'm a resident, been with the town of Westminster for the past 20 years, maybe longer. And I've noticed in the past couple of years, that East Coast, the name has changed on the sign. And that actually is a big relief to me because all of East Coast properties are looking great. I mean, to keep it up, trash is picked up. I mean, it looks wonderful. And honestly, I think this is a massive waste of resources. I don't know why we're here. I mean, the city of Westminster should be proud to have East Coast on that sign. That's all I like to say.
Includes the list. Is there anyone who's not on the list that was sworn that wish to speak?
May I say one more thing? I saw the letter that the mayor had wrote, and I just want to bring it to her attention. She has the wrong name on the bottom of it. It's not Westminster News, it's Main Street News. I don't know if she needs to change that.
Don't particularly have a rebuttal testimony, but I have a rebuttal argument and I will accept that. We've heard a lot of portions of the code thrown about by the city. And if we really focus in on the most salient part of the code here, I think it's dispositive in favor of my client. If you look at section 164 -3, it says it defines a business sign. It says that is a sign which directs attention to a business or profession or to a commodity, service, or entertainment sold or offered upon the premises where the sign is located. Words matter, words are important. It really synthesize all of those different words. There is a service, a commodity, a business offered on that premises. There's apartments for rent, they're offered there at that location. So I get it, the city doesn't like the current configuration of the sign, but that's not why we're here. We're here to ask whether the sign is permitted. Look at that sentence alone, it's allowed there. Okay, we tried to get a sign permit on this sign and it was ignored or thrown in the wastebasket. I don't know. I think one thing is for sure that when you talk to East Coast representatives, their friends, their family members, they want to be partners with the city of Westminster. Tonight, I'm not quite sure the city of Westminster wants to be partners with East Coast for whatever reason, but they remain willing and able to be partners with the city. We want to submit. The sign is dispositively allowed in the city limits. Let us submit our sign permit. We'll get into the details of what goes on the sign. I'm happy to come up with different fonts or different logos or different, whatnot, color schemes. That's not why we're here tonight. Let us submit the sign permit, process it, and we'll work through the process. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time.
Again, I think there's just a lot of misleading confusion happening here tonight.
Wait, Mr. Depot, it's almost a personal attack when you say what I'm saying is misleading. I don't know. I know you don't mean it that way, but
I'll get there. The city has nothing against the property owner. Nothing against the sign. We didn't talk about content of the sign. If it meets the requirements of signage for the building, it wouldn't be otherwise allowed. The only thing we're here tonight for, and again, not saying anything about the sign, not saying anything about the property owner or the business he runs. We do welcome him. We want businesses here. We're not trying to stop business. What we're here for is a zoning determination letter and whether the zoning administrator erred in this letter. Not whether the sign should be allowed or not, whether the argument is there solely. The determination, again, what I responded to, and it says in the letter, more specifically, you have asked whether a 4-foot by 8-foot sign is intended for the East Coast real estate investment business at the property is, one, considered a business sign as defined in section 164.3, or two, allowed as a permitted use under section 164.45.8. So again, we went on and the determination says that yes, a business would be allowed there if you go through the proper process to establish a business. Yes, a sign for that business, for East Coast business, is allowed at the property. We're not denying the sign. There's nothing that says the sign is not. We just said, yes, you can have a sign if you have the business there. It concludes saying, therefore, because the business isn't established, you can't have a business sign. Not saying a business sign is never allowed at this property. It is allowed at this property, which the determination references, if you've established a business use. The applicant is making the argument that that we're stopping the business sign, or we don't like the business sign, or we don't like the look of it. That's not referenced or discussed anywhere in this determination. We don't talk about content. It's simply responding to what was asked. If I did not properly respond to what I believe, if they were trying to ask a different question, than what I thought they were asking, they could have asked for another determination. That didn't happen. If they're not happy with what I responded to, and again, if I again misread what was asked of me, if they were asking a different question, I didn't make that determination. That's being discussed tonight. I solely was responding to what I thought the question was. And again, it's yes, a sign would be allowed for a business. The business sign is allowed in the DB. An office use is allowed in the DB. However, until that use is established, you can't have a business sign for that use. That's what we're arguing here tonight. Again, not about anything else. And we've already referenced ways you can do that. They can establish the business use there, leasing office. And once that's established, they can be in here for a permit for a business sign, and that sign can go up as long as it meets the requirements of the ordinance for signs. If they wanted to come before the board, they can get a sign for the multifamily residential use. Again, I'm discussing that, but it's not referenced here. But there are other options. Everything was, a lot of the discussion has nothing to do with what is before you tonight. And as Council Member Huff mentioned, again, it's the zoning determination. This is what you're looking at. This is by stating that I erred, you're stating that I was incorrect, that a business sign is not allowed in the DB zone. That I was incorrect, that office use is not allowed in the DB zone. Or that I was not correct in stating that you can't have a sign, a business sign for a business that doesn't exist at the property. That's what we're here for tonight.
Question. Can you have a wayfinding sign on a residential apartment building?
Yes, through a sign permit. So we would get sign permits. A lot of the applications provided, they were freestanding signs and not building mounted. A lot of them reference the leasing agent that's on the site. They would, I don't know, because I did not do any research. I just got this packet. I can't say that these signs were all legally established. They all look around the size of 32 square feet, which would be allowed for apartment buildings, or maybe they were. Over the site plan shows these signs on the site plan itself. But I can't speak to that. But yes, we've allowed wayfaring signs both for residential to direct people to apartment areas, as well as commercial to direct people through drive-throughs and other things. Again, through a sign permit application.
Without changing the zoning of it as it currently stands.
Yes, if there was a means for protecting pedestrians and traffic on site to try to maneuver traffic in and out of sites, we would work with the applicant for that. The directing of traffic can't be an advertisement for the businesses. There's a purpose, the wayfinding, directing, and protecting pedestrian and vehicular movement. But in this,
Similar to what was there before, minus the East Coast properties.
that's a wayfinding again is directional. It's an area of directing traffic or people to a location. This is a sign that is, before I would argue that the previous sign would be more in the keeping of the 32 square foot sign for a residential use at the property.
It was specific.
It was specific. Yes,
Individual.
yes. And
maybe I'll cut to the chase. If we submitted a sign permit that looked, I think the color scheme's a little bit different, the font's a little different, but in essence, the same as the previous Main Street View sign, would the city accept that?
again, they would have to submit an application to the Board of Zoning Appeals, because the Board of Zoning Appeals is who approves signs for special exceptions. I, as zoning administrator, could not approve a sign permit application for that, in this case. It's the Board of Zoning Appeals that would approve the sign for the special exception use. And once the Board of Zoning Appeals approved the sign, then I could sign off on the sign permit.
Without changing the use of.
Yeah, the use is still residential. They will be before you as a multi-family residential special exception use requesting a 32 square foot sign. But again, that's not, and I appreciate the discussion, but what's before us tonight is solely the determination. There are other options by the applicant.
Council have any comments?
With regard to what, I'm sorry.
with regard to the options that exist here.
Well, I think that Mr. Depot has explained to you
For us to deny,
that there,
or it's fine.
that there are other ways to go about getting a sign for the property. But that what's before you tonight is the initial letter from July 6th that requests the specific zone determination requested. And it says 1 and 2, and I don't know if you have that in front of you. But it's exhibit 20 in the staff report, I believe. Then the determination letter is exhibit 2R.
It's exhibit 4 in the staff, which staff provided.
Okay.
And again, so the discussion about this Board of Zoning Appeals is nothing to do with the determination. That is just a side discussion as a way they could achieve a sign, but that's not relevant to the determination that was made by the zoning, because that's not referenced.
But your determination that is the subject of the appeal is the one I just talked about, right?
Yes, it's solely about a business sign.
It's the 2R, or you said 4.
Exhibit 4.
Right.
Yeah.
June 11, 2024.
I know maybe it's tempting to adopt what Mr. Depot is suggesting and kick the can down the road and maybe it'll be accepted, but that's not dollars and cents to my client, that's dollars and cents to the city. When you look at the plain definition of what a business sign means, we need that definition, so why kick the can down the road?
Then you have the application for the public hearing, which is what you're here regarding, right? That is really what you're looking at today. Is this appeal of the determination.
Again, staff has already said that a sign for East Coast Real Estate is a business sign. We've never said it isn't, but we never said that East Coast isn't a business. We said it is. We just said that the business actually has to occur at the property.
And when you look at the plain meaning of what a business sign says, that doesn't say that. And then what Mr. Depot is suggesting of, well, just put in a leasing office and the laundry room requires a year, 18 months of engineering and submitting a new site plan.
It does not, it's $250, hand-drawn comments on a site plan that's been already.
Which will come back and say you need ADA compliance and you don't meet the square footage and you need a variance of this.
It's done administratively.
Can I please finish my thought, please? And so my point being is that creates more delay, more cost that's unnecessary when the site plan was submitted in 1986 by Dan Staley to be an apartment complex, and it's been an apartment complex since.
And again, we concur as a residential use, not a business use.
Definition of business sign that you're using, is that what you find in 164.3?
Potential doing business or profession, which of a commodity, service, entertainment sold or offered upon the premises where the sign is.
Are you ready to enter into deliberations? Do you have any other questions?
And again, it has to have been approved. You can't just go on the property, start an activity and say, therefore, I'm a business, I get a sign. You have to establish that business, whether it's a commodity, whether it's a service, those are specific uses that have to be listed in the ordinance, therefore would have to be approved through a site plan process. You can't just arbitrarily come in and establish what you call a service. I can't come onto your property and fix your sink, and therefore I've established a service of your property, and therefore I can put a sign up for my plumbing business. It's you have to look at the larger picture of what a business sign is. Again, the principal purpose of the business sign is to attract attention to a business that's been approved, not one that is arbitrarily.
Could come on a property, place a hot water heater, what have you. Put a sign out in the front yard.
Not legally.
While they're there, doing work.
Not legally.
Taking out.
Not legally, they cannot. If they submitted for a sign permit, put up a sign for their plumbing service as a fixing somebody's sink at a house, we would not approve the sign permit because a plumbing contractor does not exist at that property. It's a single family house.
But it's a temporary sign.
Yeah.
We don't have temporary signs in the zoning ordinance.
You're talking apples and oranges, I mean.
I think the salient point here is that the business has been there since 1986 when the site plan was approved.
There is no business.
It's an apartment complex and it's an apartment complex and was never owned by individual fee simple owners. It's an apartment.
Which is listed as a residential use in the ordinance. Parking is under residential. Then we have residential parking standards, which a multifamily is under, and we have commercial business parking standards, which a multifamily is not under. It's listed as a residential use. It's not as a business or commercial use. Again, if that's the case, then every residential use, whether it's a single family house, a townhouse, a duplex, a quadplex, is a business. And that's not the case. Standard utility and zoning 101. You have residential uses, you have commercial, you have industrial. He's blurring the line between what actually is. It's a residential use. Multifamily is residential. The primary function that's happening there day in and day out is people living there, just like at your house. It's not a business. The property owns it. They were all privately owned. This is just a function and form of how you fill the spot. It could have been condominiums, but they were all condominiums individually owned. By this standpoint, you could have 15 separate signs for each condominium unit that happens to want to rent out their space. And that's not the intent. It's still residential in nature. That's the end of it. That's the basis of the discussion.
I think you're blurring lines between zoning district and what the language of the code says.
So about zoning that's existed since zoning has existed.
Is not defined.
You have to establish, if it has to be a commodity that's a listed commodity type use in the zoning ordinance, that would have to be legally established. And any new use being proposed to the property needs a site plan. You can't arbitrarily create a use in the property without obtaining proper approvals and say, therefore, I have now a business and I can get a sign for that business. There's certain processes that everybody needs that everybody's required to provide. And that's going through a site plan to establish a new use. Then that new use, once established, can get a sign.
But as is, they can come back for an exception. As is.
They can come back before the Board of Zoning Appeals and ask for signage for their special exception use, yes. And again, that's
in the meantime, that sign would have to come in. Is that what we're determining?
if the sign,
If we say that the sign is illegal.
but that's not what your determination is. You're not determining whether they illegally put up a sign, the sign's illegal. The determination is which before you again is simply the determination. Was the determination wrong by calling a sign for a business sign? And that the business has to be at the property to have a business sign. That's what's before you. You have to state that the zoning administrator said that it's not a business sign, that a business doesn't have to be there to have a business sign, and that office isn't a business use. And that's the ramifications that I think we've talked about.
Go into closed session to get legal advice. That is what you're feeling. Somebody would have to make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to the annotated code of Maryland, general provisions article, section 3305B7. Get legal advice. These are the attorney to get legal. Three out of 5B7 consult with counsel to obtain legal advice.
Pursuant to code reference. Session.
And do a roll call vote. Do you have the form by any chance?
For
Closed session. So you had to make the motion, somebody would second it, and then you have to do a roll call vote.
I'll second. Those in favor? We're not gonna keep it here any longer or ask you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
We will.
Do a roll call vote. So Chair Graf. Vice Chair. Fraser. And. Sorry, I forgot your name. Richard. Sorry. So the board is gonna go into another room and we've got to, there too. That was good.
Any motion to reconvene? Open meeting.
I'd make a motion to reconvene.
Nate, second. Nate, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we want to conclude? That's not. It's unfortunate.
That is up to you. If you don't have any particular issue that you need to clarify, you can close the public hearing, move into deliberation.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, no liberation. I think we got off on all kinds of tangents and it just got to be too muddy. So we needed to refocus and get back to what the issue is. That is the zoning administrator's determination of current sign that's on the building. As it stands right now, since it was put up without proper approvals from the city, it is an illegal sign on the building. So I think that is the first and foremost issue here. And beyond that, that can be a discussion for another day as to how this can be rectified. By your coming back here for approval, sign in the future.
Then you're gonna want to talk about, because if you look at what your options are tonight,
on residential business and everything. It didn't go really muddy. That way, probably should be talking about.
Zoning administrator's decision.
Right.
So it was an illegal business sign.
You could reverse, affirm, wholly or partly, or modify the order requirement decision or determination appeal upon. May make such order requirement decision or determination as the board deems necessary. Have all powers of the office from whom the appeal is taken.
It pains me, I'm not gonna, to make this motion, with the current situation, but I will, I cannot say that, a letter, from Dr. I work from Mark Depot is, was incorrect. So, I will make a motion with the caveat, I will make a motion that we, stand behind, Mr. Depot's decision with the letter dated back in June or July, that it was not an allowable sign that was put up on that. I will, side note, I believe that we can make this work. I do believe that we can come back with, Mark's, comments about, this board allowing for a special exception, but that's not what's for us here today. We have to just talk about what, Mark Depot, decided in his letter. So I will make a motion to uphold, Mark Depot's decision in that letter.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any other comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I ask when your next public meeting is?
It's every, Tuesday, the second, oh my God, wait.
First Tuesday.
First Tuesday of the month.
If we have anything on the agenda.
Oh, I was gonna say, because it sounded like before, like last year, you met like 4 times. And then
Yeah, we meet every month if there's a case before us, yep.
All
And February 4th.
right.
And we do hope you come back.
This kid in the black, I hope they're all happy.
Like this. Semantics.
May I have, I know in the next case on the agenda, may I have a 5-10 minutes to debrief for these folks and get stuff for the next.
Yes, we can take it. That's okay.
Makes sense.
Hey, Mark, I'm struggling now. I was all night. Me too. It's still on the business.
Yes, right? They have never.
Somebody told me.
They don't lie.
Sorry that you. Thanks, guys.
Decided to come work for the city.
Why did I sign up for this?
They don't.
Oh, man.
Yes, this was not easy. God bless your soul.
True story, you want that? Keep this guy in line.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, you were there. It's interesting. It actually started with a big thousand. You're not doing her.
I was surprised.
I need to see that. The next one's is complicated. It shouldn't be. Again, money, well, never mind, we'll get to.
You don't have to sacrifice stuff right now.
I think Joe gave you the staff reports for this night.
Yes.
This isn't it, this is all that stuff, this is what they gave me, I didn't have this.
What I had.
Yeah, but that's staff report stuff.
Next report.
Okay, but you need the attorney, that one, but I got.
I was trying to.
It wasn't there.
That's going good. Staff report. Yeah.
Usually there's.
There you go.
And statistics, oh, there it is.
Recommendation, inclusion and recommendation and suggested.
Got it, okay, so maybe I did.
That's that.
Okay.
Is this gonna be a decision signed? They've signed the decision. Yeah, because I mean, we get that now, so.
So this is complicated. What should it be? Are you here?
No,
Yeah.
this one is?
Go.
Go. Just tell them you. Oh, God, switch jackets too.
That's not on my title. Chief of Service. It's tough. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
We are going to reconvene, to discuss BZA case number 24-08. Appeal of the zoning administrator's notice of violation. This is an appeal of the zoning administrator's notice of violation dated September 27th, 2024. Unapproved operation of a retail sales establishment, the installation of an unapproved sign, and the illegal use of a city sidewalk property 279 East Main Street. Turn the floor over again.
Good evening, everyone. Again, Matthew, Rebecca, Matthew Herb, HUR. I'm here with Johan, who is, the owner, the property owner. And this is in somewhat of an interesting procedural posture, so preliminarily, I would propose that we have a continuance of this matter for a couple of reasons. The first reason being that there is a text amendment before the mayor and common council, and then, next Monday, the 13th, which would define a vape shop and other things, for the code. And I think that would change some of the different things the board would be considering here, that may render our appeal to, at that point in time, or may put us in a position where we move forward. The other reasons why I would ask for a continuance are that the signage has been removed, and so that's and the obstruction of the sidewalk have been removed. And Mr. Podolak's here to discuss the fact that he has submitted a site plan to the city, and comments came back from the city, and he's working on addressing those comments so that I think we're in a position that we should have this matter across the finish line in the next month or two here. And it would be a shame to shut this man's business down while all that's happening. We're working in good faith with the city. So I think a continuance would be prudent and in order to allow Mr. Chohan and his tenant to A, see what the city requires in terms of the zoning district, and B, avoid a violation that would cause this business to shut down temporarily and then reopen when Mr. Podolak has finished addressing the comments from the city, which again, we can get into it, Mr. Podolak can discuss it, but I don't think any of the comments from the city are things that are not possible to achieve within a timeline.
You know, the comments, I think landscaping is our biggest problem. You know, we would retroactively try to create landscape islands to satisfy the code. And sometimes that's easier said than done. Just given the way these properties have been configured over the years, how truck turning movements and access to these properties, to pick up trash, to deliver goods. So bottom line is, I think, you know, we're in the process. We intend to make this facility, bring it up to code and satisfy the zoning minister and also the director of planning. And we intend to take it from the planning commission. So ultimately, we are pursuing compliance. You know, to throw a business out on the street after someone's moved in and spent money to open the doors. It's like Mr. Matthias said, what are we doing? You know, I've been around as a professional engineer for over 30 years, and I've never run into such hard-nosed administration of zoning. And in fact, zoning regulations, I've had many cases where people have violated the zoning code, but we've always been able to prepare, process, and get a site development approved and bring them into compliance. So the case law is basically, we can comply after the fact, believe me. And so I think that's important to know. You know, I always part of the agreed continuance would allow us to bring everything into conformance, which I think is the goal of everyone.
Just so I'm clear on this is an addition to the laundromat building, is that what?
It's across the street.
Across the street, so behind the pizza?
It's, yeah, behind the pizza, yes.
Complex, okay. These are several businesses.
Mr. Chohan's been the proprietor of Pizza Bowlways, and then he couple of years ago, he bought the whole building, so there's an auto repair shop, and there's
Yeah,
the.
it was Wheeler Chrysler Plymouth for those.
After 2020 and they went out of.
Okay, so.
So.
Objections from staff or continuance?
We would object to continuance. I think again, there's an issue being raised by the appellant that isn't relevant to what's before you. Again, there was a notice of violation issued that regardless of what happens with the text amendment for the use, regardless of the fact the site plan's been submitted, it doesn't change the fact that a notice of violation is being appealed. Not a determination, not whether the use is allowed, whether eventually it will be. It's solely for a notice of violation for an illegal operation of retail establishment. There's no determination made that use, it was solely a notice of violation that's being appealed. And again, and it's referenced in it that even if a zoning determination was requested and proposed use was found to be allowed at the property, it would not impact the merits of the notice of violation for you. So again, there's just no need for a continuance because any other further actions is irrelevant to the fact that they appealed a notice of violation.
So even if we granted the continuance, we would be right back here potentially next month at his same exact spot.
Yes, because even if the use was approved and the site plan was approved, the notice of violation would still have been valid. That they're appealing that it wasn't, that it was, that I erred in and violating the property for opening a business illegally, for putting up signs illegally. That's what's before you.
Yeah, but then what's the implication of that, okay, now they are in compliance and it's now moved. I know the code says it's the job of the panel not to consider moot issues. So I would consider that a moot issue once the property owner is in compliance. Again, this falls in the arena of we have a property owner trying to get into all the background of this tonight, but I think this will all be rendered moot. Whether there's a violation, there was a violation at one time, really not matter. Once he's in compliance and doing the right thing.
The business of the money.
But again, you're providing the ability for an illegal business to continue operating that other businesses aren't afforded. They were notified a year ago what you had to do, and he ignored the zoning administrator and opened up a business regardless. So this is just prolonging, and if the mayor and county council don't choose to allow certain uses, so the site plan can't meet compliance. So again, it's rewarding property for not following what everybody else follows, and it's only for the notice of violation. Even if you were to find that I did or did not error in the violation, it doesn't eliminate the fact that they still have to go through the process they have to go forward with. So the continuation just seems to allow the continuation of a use that shouldn't be there in the first place.
But again, we'll know on the 13th what the common council is doing with vape shops, and if it does not permit Mr. Chohan's tenant to continue, then the shop closes, and that's the end of the story, and the appeals withdrawn. If the mayor common council is rules positively towards it, then we're going to continue on with the site plan process. I get there's frustration, there's consternation about this, but the goal is to try to have businesses work with the city and get into compliance. Mr. Chohan and his tenant definitely are trying. I get Mr. Depot's frustration. I find clients, the way they come to me, and they don't tend to do things in the wrong order when they come to the attorney, because they're trying to fix it, so.
Okay, can I come to this co-counsel real quick just to clarify? So, yes, thank you. Kelly Miller, 73 East Main Street, Westminster, Maryland, 11157. I'm sorry, I didn't do this. I just want to clarify. So, we are requesting a continuance for tonight, because part of the issue here is going to be part of the issue here tonight is going to be determined in some way, shape, or fashion by mayor and council's actions on a text amendment, probably next week, if they vote next week. And so pending them voting next week on this, we would probably withdraw this appeal. But we can't withdraw this appeal until we know that they've taken some action on the text, because then we've given up our appeal rights. So rather than have a full-blown hearing, partially on code that is probably gonna change next week when a text amendment is voted on, we think it saves everybody some time and energy to continue this to next month, knowing that there's a strong chance that prior to it being continued onto your next agenda, it's gonna be withdrawn anyways. Because as Matt said, there's a site plan being processed for this property, which then leaves the use in question, which is part of what's going to be determined with any potential text. So I know, again, Mr. Huss, this is perhaps not your easy, sorry. You're really throwing some at you tonight, but that's the gist of the request for the continuance. It's just from an efficiency standpoint, there's really no purpose on us putting on a full-blown case for you tonight. That might be a moot point on Monday night, action by mayor and council.
Now, if it's withdrawn, what then?
It wouldn't be with.
If we withdraw.
It's our opinion about the city.
Right, I'm just going ahead here, if you elect to withdraw that, that doesn't make the violation go away
I cite him with a municipal infraction for operating the business illegally.
for that time period, even though moving forward.
Well, we can have another conversation about that. I mean,
Okay.
I think nobody here is trying to, maybe Mr. Depot is, but I don't think the city's trying to violate somebody who's actively working through a site plan process. I hope not. That's not the practice of any other jurisdiction. So if that's going to be the position that we're challenging, then perhaps we will be back before you. But assuming that some action is taken on the text amendment and that we are allowed to continue and finalize the site plan process, that's what would then lead to a withdrawal of this. We're making a motion to continue tonight, sorry, just to be clear, we're making a motion to continue, we are asking this board to vote favorably on a motion to continue this. And we/staff will correspond with you,
And if we do that, you still have the ability to cite them in violation, fine them, whatever that process is with the city.
The only reason I have not cited them with the municipal infractions because of the appeal case is that still they continue to operate the business illegally, and if they're arguing that I incorrectly violated them or opened up a business illegally, then we should be having that discussion. So I'm sorry. Alyssa, do you have something you want to share?
No, I think what you've said is exactly correct. There seems to be a conflating of issues here. One is whether the use is going to be permitted, or whether it's even permitted now, where there's been no request for a determination about whether it is. The issue is, on the date of the violation notices, was the business in violation with respect to the sign and with respect to the other matters that were cited? So it's not going to be moot. If the applicant is, or the appellant is saying that they're going to withdraw it and pay the fines, perhaps that's an issue for the board to decide whether they want to see whether that happens. But the issues are not moot, and I think Mark is correct about that.
And just for the record, if I can get you to state your name and affiliation with the city.
Forgive me. My name is Alyssa Levan. I'm the city attorney.
Inclination for the other to issue a continuance or? I would think, given pending council decision.
Next week.
If they will can still, if say that, just say Monday is when it is. And say it's. With the assumption that Mark can still, not Mark, the city can still, with your understanding, they can still come and fine you for that period of time that you were operating under that illegal. I don't know the details yet, but under that incorrect business model, say it that way, that would, I would assume would have to happen, or they have that option to do that, and so you have to decide if you're okay with that. Did I say that?
So if they withdraw the appeal, we just
They're not withdrawing the
ascertain
appeal yet.
if they do, but they'd still be liable for any
The
penalty.
period of time that they were in penalty.
Well, that would be, that's a yet to be determined issue.
So that's why you would have to decide today if you wanted to, because that would give them the right to follow through with that.
So maybe you could explain to the board how, when you're dealing with a notice of violation that occurred in the past, that an action by the mayor and common council next week would somehow change that whole thing, because this is something that occurred before.
Well,
Can I answer that? I would love to answer that.
That's why we're here, Pete.
Because we believe under the existing code, as it's currently written, that Mr. Chohan's tenant is a permitted use. And all he was doing was replacing one tenant that wasn't exist. This is an existing business, this is an old business. There's already a tenant there, and this is one tenant subbing in for another tenant. So I think
Same
that
business.
the different type of business, but nothing substantially changed other than there's a different type of business in this structure. And Mr. Podolak's having to go back and do a site plan for a building that was 1930s,
Yeah.
so it takes some time.
There's kind of two issues, but Mr. Depot might disagree, so I might talk to you about it.
We're not gonna.
Speak up a little bit to try to cap.
Okay, I don't want you to think I'm yelling at you. You know, the first, and I think what Mr. Depot is saying is that he didn't necessarily make or determine a violation on the use itself, but on the fact that they hadn't gone through and gotten site plan approval. And what we're saying is the use is allowed under the code, and we're going through site plan approval now. We have filed a site plan and are going and working through that process. Zoning use is can you or can you not do this on the property, and site plan is how, can you meet the technical requirements? Mayor and council's action on Monday will answer the use question, whether that is or is not a question, because I'm still a little unclear of that, of the violation, but whether that is or is not a question, that will be very clearly answered by action the mayor and council takes on a pending text amendment. Because that pending text amendment will define vape shop, which is not currently a use listed in the code. It will define it and it will allow for it in certain zoning districts. That will then answer, is this use allowed on the site or is it not, depending on the action on that text amendment. And then from there, the site plan, which is already in process, will either continue in process, be reviewed, all comments will have to be addressed, or if the use is not allowed because of the text amendment, then the site plan, I guess, goes away and the tenant gets evicted and they can't have the use at the site. That's why the action by mayor and council, although after the notice of violation, is important here because it poses definitions that answer the use question of this that were not present and are not currently available in the code for us to look at and talk to you about tonight. So that's why I believe a continuance is appropriate for that reason. I understand that even if the notice of violation is saying you only needed a site plan, the use is still a question that has to be answered for anything to happen at the site with or without the site plan. So I think it is relevant for you to wait until mayor and council acts on this text amendment. It has been the practice of every jurisdiction that I've worked in to work with clients who try to remediate a situation by going through a site plan process. So I'm not going to say that never in the history has someone actually been fined on a daily basis. But I will tell you that in the history of my career for the past 10 years, never once have I seen a jurisdiction fine someone on a daily basis who submits and goes through the proper technical process. So I'm hoping that that's not what we are discussing here tonight. We are trying to make this right and solve this problem. This is something that our firm was retained on a few months ago when this was filed. So we are trying to work towards a solution. I think that from an efficiency perspective, it makes sense to continue this because of that the pending text amendment determination. Because ultimately, like I said, if that text amendment says we can't have this use of the property, then this whole thing goes away anyways. So happy to answer any questions that anyone has. I know, again, this is one that's a bit more complicated than your average bear, but that's the gist.
And there were 3 issues that were noted in the notice of violation.
Yeah, the signage has
The
been
signage has
removed,
been removed.
and there were obstruction against signage also as a sidewalk.
Like a sandwich sign?
Sandwich sign, yeah.
So there was an ER auto place that needs a sign permit. There was the vape signs that need a sign permit, and then the sandwich board sign that needs different approvals, but none of them were obtained, but.
The tobacco signs are removed, right?
But
And no, OER signs.
last time I was up there, they were up there, they were still there, but it's been a week or so. But I think from a staff standpoint, if it's an allowed use, an office use, that open illegally, the violation would still be valid. We're looking at a violation being submitted, they're appealing. So, if it was a permitted use, a listed use in the DB zone today, and it opened up without proper approvals, they would have received a notice of violation. Whether the mayor and county council allow a use in that district that they're trying to establish, they still haven't established yet, it's operating in violation of the ordinance. That's what was provided, a violation of a business operating without proper approvals. And any continuation of it, as stated by the appellant, that they will continue operating this business. My proceedings have to stay. I know Alyssa and I haven't had a chance to talk about this, but if you appeal a determination, or in this case, an order, I have to stay I can't proceed with what I typically would proceed with, and I do have to look into that a little more. So by continuing this case.
Mark, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Let's not address the stay because
Okay.
it is true that the stay, that while it's on appeal, it stays the enforcement of those citations. It does not stay any action about the property on an unrelated application.
Unrelated, yeah. So again, regardless of what happens, if by continuing or if they get approval, we have to wait months to go through a site plan process, we still have a business operating without any approvals, that by continuing this case just prolongs and somebody doing something that isn't otherwise allowed. And again, so regardless of what happens, we're still looking at what's before you as a notice of violation, and did the zoning administrator make an error in issuing the violation? That's what's being appealed. Doesn't matter what happens in the future, whether the use is therefore allowed. This, what's before you today, has been appealed by the appellant, again, for the current notice of violation that was back in September 27th, 2024.
I'm inclined to issue continuance. Indicate
to move forward.
Special motion. If, I'm sorry, real quick, if you do, I think we did this with the last one, if you're gonna propose a continuance, it should be a date certain. That would, we did with the previous
Wait, so do we have
February fourth.
February fourth?
There's nothing scheduled. Didn't get any of that.
So if you're gonna continue it with that.
But you will have-
date certain.
But if we continue this, if they were to continue this, we would then have this and we'd have the decision in the last
Yes,
case, so. If
I'm
you're
sorry,
going to continue it, I can continue it to a certain place and time.
Continuance. To our next schedule. Here we go. 1838. We have a motion made and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Opposed?
2-1.
Okay. Never.
Did you close the meeting?
Oh.
No, we have not yet.
I'm getting.
you have. That has no other business.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You could buy.
All right, let's